Welcome to the Davos in the Desert podcast series. My name is Mark Oliver and I am the producer of the Davos in the Desert podcast series. Our podcasts feature thought leaders in business and public policy. Our sessions are meant to be informative and thought-provoking. This podcast is part of Davos in the Desert's Future of Endoscopic Medical Devices conference. Our guest John Krall. Mr. Krall has more than 35 years of executive experience in the medical devices industry. Without further ado, here is David Wanatik, the CEO of Davos in the Desert and the host of our podcast series.
Welcome to Davos in the Desert. I'm David Wanatik, the CEO of Davos in the Desert. I'm here with John Krall, who is a veteran in the medical devices industry. He spent the past 35 years or so working with a variety of medical device companies and medical manufacturing companies. His experience is very broad within the medical device field. He's been involved with biologics, laboratory issues, orthopedics, and now John Krall is here to speak to us about the future of endoscopic medical devices. So John, thank you very much for joining us.
Dave, thank you for having me, and thanks for kind of touching an area that, believe it or not, gets used probably more in surgery now than ever, and yet very few people understand the background of it.
Good. So let's start off, assuming we don't know almost anything about endoscopy. What is endoscopy?
Yeah, so let's back up. I always like to start at the ground and go up. It's the eye of the surgeon. No matter what we do, the surgeon's eyes are the determining factor. Just like in us, our eyes are our main thing. So the great thing about what's happening in this space is, how can I take the eye of the surgeon and put it where it's never been before, or take it to places with less invasive procedures? So in the old-fashioned days, when surgery was going in the days, they'd have to rip open the chest or whatever. I had a knee surgery done in 1972, and my scar's about this long. Today, that would be a pinhole. Okay, so as an evolution of time, this is the kind of advent of things. And what's really neat is we're going now into a space and time where the technology is finally moving at a pace where in the past we would try to take technology and apply it to medicine. But now technology is moving so fast, we're going to take medicine and apply it to technology. So with that understood, let's go back to what endoscopic, which your original question. How do I take the eyes of the surgeon and give him the ability to see like where he's never seen before? So back, almost 40 some years ago, when they were doing these big knee procedures, and I can get into the history and all that, but basically a guy said, hey, a periscope. Remember, glass on one end, and I can be here and be big, but I could shoot up 10 feet with the right mirrors and I could see across. The idea came for the idea of, well, why don't we do that in the body? So from that original time frame until now, it's basically a periscope. It's a rod lens. It's a rod that looks like this. Okay. And this has been the standard now for almost 40 years. Okay. So what happens with this, then you're going to take the eye of the surgeon. So this now becomes the extension of the surgeon's eye. And there's actually scopes back in the day that were just like this, that you would look in just with their eye, and almost like a magnifier, like a periscope or the little ship things. So now remember, these are the 70s and then the 80s, and then all of a sudden computerization starts coming with technology, and all of a sudden the camera went from being on film to a little digital thing that all of a sudden became the VCR, that became all the things that we've seen from our normal life. TV, television, movie screens, all that, now our cell phone. So in the old days, you remember, I'm older now, the big cameras. Everybody, the camera, you go on a thing, boom, the same thing. So as the cameras have gotten small to the point where we have this type of camera on our phone, and we have to thank the phone industry for that, we are now going to go away from this rod lens concept where I have to have all this equipment and this big power of information and stuff, now literally in a small box. So this advent, after about a 40-year period, is going to change everything. So an example, where the camera was out here, now the camera is right there.
Okay, so just a definitional sub question about endoscopic medical devices. It doesn't necessarily have to be inserted into a human orifice. It can be inserted into the chest or abdomen. Is that correct? Okay.
Absolutely. So
And
when
then,
you look at it, there's basically two styles of endoscopes. You go on, the doctor takes it and does your ear, and they will do something in your nose. Everybody knows the colonoscopy, a big curvy snake-like device that goes through and measures things. So imagine that colonoscopy scope. Very cool technology. Colonoscopy has been changed. Now they have imaging, but the thing is, that's a reusable scope. It's big. You still need all this equipment, but it's a thing. The biggest issue now in the world of medicine, not just an endoscope, but in all areas, is infection. So you're seeing the growth of what they call disposables or one-time use. The cost of sterilizing a product. I mean, when they get these done, you got to imagine you got glass, you got all these things. Infection, the number one concern in the medical world right now, especially even after COVID, is infection. So not only just an endoscope, but in the whole medical space. So as you watch these spaces, we're going to be going from a reusable reprocessing sterilization type scenario to controlled sterilization in manufacturing facilities that then deliver a disposable device. And this is happening in total knees and hips, where you literally are getting a complete set pre-made for you that's pre-sterilized, literally brought from the factory right to the patient.
well, that's very interesting. Just one more question about the definition of endoscopic medical devices. Are they small enough to go into the blood vessels? To put a camera inside the blood vessels?
Dave, you love where we're going because you're thinking like a few of the companies that we're thinking about. So now that I have a chip, the problem with the rod lens is that's it. It's a rod lens. It's straight. So how I get different angles is by the angle of that periscope. Straight 90, I can see this way, I can see 40, I can see 30, I can see 60. So now I'm limited to that angle of that scope because of the rod lens. But wait, John, you just said, what if I put a tip of a camera right here? And then I have a steering mechanism that can steer that camera. And the problem with rod lens was you always had light. You had to have a separate light source because you needed so much illumination to go to the camera. Now these cameras are very expensive, very nice. And now they have controls to get that. But then you always have to do it in a wet environment because the magnification part. And that's been the way it's been for years. It's been very good. It's been great. It's progressed substantially. Substantially. But it's expensive to equip an ER room just to do basic knee arthroscopic or muscular skeleton arthroscopic. To do it properly, you've got $100,000 investment. Okay. But wait, now we have these cameras. I mean, we can buy this phone that has this phenomenal camera that does everything. I can take a picture in the dark and still see things. So back to your question, as that technology evolves and software and AI, I will literally be able to go into the bloodstream with the camera that will be able to identify the difference between a platelet, a white blood cell, a red blood cell, as if you and I were looking at each other right now, because the advent of computer technology and color mapping and the advent of increased speed of computers now with quantum computing, I'll be able to, just like that, I'll be able to look at it, even though I'm in a thick, viscous solution. Now, is that going to happen tomorrow? No, this is going to take years, but probably within the next 7 to 10 years, that's going to be doable. So why is that important? When you do an endoscopic approach, or when they do a heart valve or something like that, they shoot a guide wire up through your leg or even through their arm. Radiation, they have to x-ray. They have to see where that metal piece is going to put that stent in. So the doctors are covered up in their x-ray gowns and all that. Great procedure. It saved thousands and millions of lives probably. But the problem is radiation, hazard, exposure. Can I do the same thing with as simple as a steerable little camera that now, can go through there with that little tip and turn and navigate and also see that. Now, this is where this technology is going to get good. And hold that thought. I'll let you ask your next question.
You want me to ask my question now?
Well, I'm sorry. I mean, I can continue on that. So,
Oh, okay.
I apologize for that. So, what I'm saying is, Where in the past, we were concerned about getting the proper image, and they've been able to do that through lots of advancement. And big companies, the Strykers, the Zimmers, the J&J, Endoscopic, Olympus, all the camera companies. Now they're taking that, and we are entering this world of nano, where everything's being reduced. Remember the first cell phones were a bag and a box and the old things? Just like that's happening in this. And again, because this technology has advanced so much in the phone camera world, that same technology is now being applied in the medical space. Okay. Now, what makes it good? Anybody can put a camera, but then there's different mechanisms, steering capabilities, heat treatment, things. You know, the ideal world, can I have one camera to do it all? Yeah, that's a possibility because of that camera. And can I steer it to where I go? But where it really gets good is that's great. I can see the eyes of the surgeon. So what's really cool now, you've seen it. Just look in the last 6 months, Apple, Google glasses, all this. Because in the past, when the doctor would operate, he had to have skills because he's looking up at a screen or he's looking at a monitor. Now I can overlay that image right onto the anatomy. And with the advent of all these cool things that are happening, where an MRI or an ultrasound now becomes an image-guided scenario. So now imagine with computers that I take an MRI of the body or the head, let's just take the sinus, and it literally maps it so that I can guide that all the way up into here, literally by the AI calculating that map off of that image and helping that. Now, again, that's down the road, but today we can do this by adding a steering mechanism, just like your car. Give me a Google map and follow that dot, I can drive anywhere. Same with here. As long as I know the dot I need to go to, what's the path of least resistance? Okay. So we're right at this stage. You sit there and you go, wow. You know, so you talk about heart, spine.
So are you saying that in a lot of cases the camera is at the top, or even external to the body, or you're saying the camera is more often at the tip deep inside the body?
Yesterday technology, big camera attached to this. Today's technology is the camera's right there on that little tip.
Wow.
Okay.
And is there self-steering? So can the device that you insert, the endoscopic device, can that, let's say if it was in a blood vessel, can it detect when it's hitting the walls and it needs to turn so it doesn't pierce the walls that it's contained in?
Excellent question, Dave. And this is where, yes, because just like a guide wire, there's going to be technique. And this is why, interventional radiologist, the heart doctor makes a lot of money. There's an art to it, and a lot of it is feel and sensation. Now, can I give that feel and sensation a boost by adding visibility to it? Okay. But now here's when you say, let's look at this from a business standpoint of things. Where's the next growth? We're walking into an area again of AI, computer technology, robotic control. I mean, go down to the airport right now. You can pick up a self-driverless car in the city of Phoenix and it'll take you to your destination. Imagine down the road that same capability being helping the doctor guide that. So just like if the doctor's getting too close to a vessel or he's approaching, maybe there's a warning button, maybe there's a symbol. Is that done today? No. Is it in development? Absolutely. But the idea is that as we again, now this is the AI space, because as we collect this data, those computers are careful in it. Now we can pretty much say that with a 98% accuracy that going up this vessel, if you follow this path, you're going to hit a home run every time. Okay. Where now that's maybe a 20%. There's a thing called balloon sinuplasty, and you may see it where they take a balloon into your sinuses and they inflate this balloon to make a canal. And then in the difficult cases, they'll come up with a stent, just like they do in heart. It expands to give the ability to breathe. Only 10% of the ENT surgeons do that procedure because they're doing it blindly, because the current technology is a rigid scope that can only go so far. Now take that same technology with steerability, and now the doctor can go beyond that. So imagine now being able to see where you're going, add an attachment or a balloon or a micro device, a laser or a cautery, and now the doctor's not only seeing there, he can do treatment. He can diagnose, treat, and even apply like a targeted antibiotic, let's say. Okay, but believe it or not, it's 2024, and today they have to take a device and they have to pre-bend it. Dave, you look like a 24, so I'm just gonna pre-bend that. That's only 9% of the doctors do it because of facial fractures. They can't see, they're scared to do it, and so they don't, you know. So what's happening now, I've just taken that and made that an ability. That's an example. Let's take in heart. You're doing an open heart surgery and a cardiologist wants to see a vessel or he wants to see a tear. Imagine a shrapnel and a trauma now where doctors can steer around and say, hey, I see it on the x-ray, there's a bullet there, but I can't find it without moving a lot of tissue. But if I move that tissue, I can damage that organ. Hey, bingo, there it is. Put a little clapser over, pull it out. So this is opening up a whole new way, along with the robotics that now can control other things. Almost all, I mean, prostate cancer removal is pretty much done by robots, but it's a larger scale. So what does happen is we're now going to take this down to the nanoscale. Brain, I mean, you're going to be able to go into places you've never been able to go before. Imagine going into a knee and seeing a knee and then being able not just to see the part of that knee, but navigate around that knee, find a tear, add a little cautery to clean that tear up, put a little biologic or a suture to tow it together, all within a space that, you know, we finally can accomplish.
And is there such thing as medicine marking what needs to be removed or treated? So in other words, if you have cancer, can you have a patient take some medicine and the medicine mark where there's cancerous cells and then have the robot go in there and extricate those cancerous cells?
That is a great thing, and I just had one here. So I'll give an example of what's happening in that. And what's happening in that space, there's actually the Department of Health has some grant money being funded right now for that purpose. So the idea is, you've heard of the Cancer Moonshot program. We put a man on the moon in 10 years. Why can't we cure cancer in 10 years? So the Department of Health has started a separate program called the Advanced Surgical Products, something, I don't know the exact name, apologize. But take cancer now. You have to identify it. Well, first of all, you have to know you have it, then you have to identify it, then you have to treat it or remove it, and then you have to heal after. Okay. The problem is now, and my wife just went through this, she's okay if I share this. She had a lumpectomy done. They didn't get all the things, so now they have to go back and do radiation. Well, why didn't they get all the cancer cells? A, couldn't see it, couldn't identify it quickly enough. Yeah, 3 days later in the lab. So what they're trying to do is, let's say I have a kidney tumor. Okay, we can see it on the MRI or CAT scan or other, but we really don't know. We have to biopsy it. So that means I have to enter the body to go in and biopsy. Okay. Then I have to pull that biopsy, send it to the lab, and then it gets processed 3 days later. Yes, John, you have cancer. We got to take care of it. But wait a minute. We live in this world of instant identification. So the goal of this is, I want to go in there, see that tumor guided, because now I know where it's at. Now, because of AI and lots of data, I'm taking literally micro pictures of that tumor, and it's going to send it to the computer. It's going to say, John, there's a 98% chance that's a cancerous kidney tumor, whatever fancy name it has. Okay. Now, how do I know? Now I take a fluorescent dye and I spray it, because I know pretty much through AI that it's an 80% chance of this. I spray it. Now I identify it. Okay. I know, because technology has taught us that now that's this tumor. It needs to be removed. Well, I'm already down there, right? Let's remove it. Take it out. So what they want to do with this grant is, can I go in a body and within 10 minutes identify that tumor, pathology correctly identify that tumor, remove that tumor, all within a 10-minute span. Now, moonshot? Yeah. If you said somebody in 1958, we're going to land them on the moon by 1969, they'd laugh at you. They believe we can do this, because now that technology, and taking that again, that eye of that surgeon, now equipping it with power of identification like they've never seen before, and in taking that data and then allowing it with other applications to do it. Laser, cautery, cutting mechanisms, hold free. When they do a lung tumor, they go down with a big bronchular scope, but the problem, it's big. They can't get to the part. They just freeze those cells. They freeze it and evacuate it. But guess what? it starts on the lower, smaller sides. And if you can capture it earlier, that's why there's all this money being donated post-COVID treatment. So can I go down there with a mini scope that's like swallowing a spaghetti noodle, except they would guide it into the lungs to go in there, identify it, freeze it, and take it out on the lower levels, catch it early, save cancer.
Okay, so in addition to putting a camera at the tip of the device, the endoscopic medical device, it seems like you can put a mechanism to cause freezing, to cause cauterization, to burn, to cut, to remove. All that's right. Okay.
And so what you're going to do is you have what you call devices. So you're going to have the vision, which will be the camera. Then you'll have, as much as it could be, a tube for delivering, the fluorescent, a tube for evacuating the fluorescence, or suction as they call it commonly. You may have a device that slides over, which we have a company has a device that can slide over. So I may say, hey, can I slide over a little laser tube? And now I have a steerable laser that I can do something. Pull out, slide it over with a cautery, which is an electric knife. I may just need a biopsy clipper, so can I do that? And yeah, so then you're going to have that advancement. So as those things get smaller, you'll still have the devices. So now, which goes through, and this is actually one of the smaller scopes. In the same scope where this is just a camera, I'm going to be able to have a laser and all those things I just told you about on a smaller scale, but capability, so that now I've got a working, not just a camera, I have a medical surgical tool that I can guide.
And all that's on the same device. It's not like you put 3 or 4 devices in there. It's the same device.
You'll have interconnections, but yeah, so it may be from a cost standpoint. Now let's put our business hats on. Is it better to say I have a camera that I can slide this thing over when I need cautery? Grab a kit, I can slide a suction thing. Now, what really is cool, Dave, is now you take 2 of those cameras and put them together because of, again, AI. Think our gaming industry and some of the things you share from other industries. I have stereoscopic vision now. So now I'm 3Ding it. Okay. And because of just adding that. So the idea is, a space is still going to be big. I mean, if I can take the size of a pencil, which you look at is, would you rather have the size of a pencil going in your body, that thickness, or would you rather have a big old open procedure? So through that size of that pencil, I'm going to be able to do those things pretty quickly. The goal is then eventually keep making that smaller and smaller.
Is some of the technology almost like missile technology and using lasers to point where you want the bombs to fall? So like you use in the military, I believe I can put a laser on the enemy position, and that attracts the bomb. Is it almost
exactly the same thing? So how does that work? It all works with GPS. The bombs work by identifying a GPS point on the ground, on Earth, and using satellite technology. And we all know, we're all science people. 3 points of, if you give me 3 points, I can determine where something's at. That's why we have really high paid mathematical geniuses to do that. So now this is where this is not just endoscopic. This is the whole medical advancement of what's happening. 8 weeks ago, IBM announced that quantum computing is going to be a stage that is going to be able to be commercialized very quickly. So now my scope and my decision making and my tools to build that. Remember when you got your first, PC game and you thought it was so cool because it was moving so fast? Today, a kid looks at that and laughs because Pac-Man was cool to me, but to them, they're going, "Are you kidding me? That's pretty boring." So as that technology advances now, back to your question, I'm not going to be able to identify that tumor because I can't see that tumor. But I know by taking an MRI, which does a 360 and does a whole square, and the computers now are so fast, it's going to calculate that that's exactly so many X's and so many Y's and so many Z's away from it. I'm going to program that into my scope calculations because now it's going to map it not only there. So literally, this happened in 1996 when I sold the second one in the US. We did this for craniotomies. A doctor could take a CT and an MRI and they merged them. At that time, a very expensive Silicon Graphics $500,000 computer, and then turn it into a 3D image that you see now pretty common in any thing. And by using the 3 points array, we used to have a 3-point array, and then the device would have 3 points, and I knew the tip. So if I knew the point to that distance, so then I guided it. So we were able to bullseye tumors and took craniotomy holes from 4 inches down to the size of a quarter because we knew where we're going. We could actually virtually do a surgery before that. Well, that's 25 years. That technology is now advanced dramatically. And so now I literally can tell you almost with micromillimeter precision, that's where that tumor is. The question is, how do I get to that? Well, I've got skin, I got bone, I got fascia, I got kidney, I got ribs, I got muscle, I got there's a bile duct, I got to get around that. There's part of the lung, I got to get around that. And now you can't. That's why they have to open, do, and put that. But now with a steerable device, almost like a targeted bomb. I mean, literally, now, this is our goal. I mean, that's our future goal when it's in this space, is can the computer. Now, take the Da Vinci, which is bigger, but pretty much that's how they're doing it with prostate, certain stomach procedures where you have this big rhododactyl. They'll have like 7 points of entry, and they're all down in there, working it like this and using the screen. And as they're doing this, the data is being collected, and everyone they do makes the next one even better. And so this is where it's all going really quickly, by the way.
Yeah, it seems like there's a pretty direct relationship between the size of the incision and the recovery rate. So the smaller the incision, the faster the recovery rates. Is that because there's simply less trauma to the body? Is it because less body is exposed to contamination, to germs, what have you? Why else?
Excellent question. Because yes, 1 millimeter of opening usually means 3 millimeters of scar. Okay, and scar is a protective defense mechanism that your body does. When you cut yourself, the bigger the cut, the more the scar. Same as your body. You heal inside just like you heal outside. So the less trauma I can do to that, the less thing. And I'll give you a great example. Total hip. My brother had his total hip done 2 weeks ago. That was when it first came out, it was a 5-day in the hospital. Okay. You were in a cast and you weren't walking for 6 weeks. He got it done, was home the next day, and by Thursday, he gave up his walker. By Friday, he gave up his cane, and 2 weeks later, he's walking like normal. Guess what? That procedure now is a minimally invasive procedure where they do muscle sparing. Instead of cutting, they guide themselves down to where they have to be, and they've developed equipment so that I have less scarring. Take the spine, the back of the days, the big scars in spine. Now they're doing it through micro holes because I can get and see through guiding and all that. So image guided has been there. You see all these robots are working on image guided, but it still hasn't fixed this part, the vision of the surgeon. I still got to see it when I'm there. Okay, I can get there now, but I still need the surgeon to see and evaluate from that. Will that eventually be replaced by robots? Not in our lifetime, but eventually could be.
Do the insurance companies appreciate, the fact that endoscopic procedures can reduce hospitalization, accelerate recovery? They favorable to that, or they still negotiate like crazy to squeeze?
Yeah, actually, man, you're asking excellent questions because as bad as the insurance company sees as they made over $100 billion, the top 5 in 2022 in revenue, you sit there and you go, yes, the pressure is on the insurance companies. They're looking to win. But guess what? The insurance company, like everybody says, hey, John, I got this fancy new device. It's going to be great. And the first thing they say is show me. So now if you can get the right data, and you can prove this, and data takes studies and times, yes, they will. And I've seen this happen in certain procedures. Actually, there was an endoscopic procedure just got approved for spine, I think, in October. That took a couple years, but that's going to be drastically big improvement because now that it's paid for, the doctors will learn and it will cut down that cost. So part of it with any company, and we teach this, is data from day one. Every bit of data that you can get, because then I can say, look, we've done 10 of these cases and we've got the initial data, then we're going to do 20 cases and all that. And by doing this, you have to take it in and it's costing you $50,000 in a hospital, $25,000 in a surgery center. Can I maybe do it in an office? That's the ultimate goal. But even if I can reduce that surgery cost time in a ACS or a surgery center from an hour case to a 30-minute case, I just saved them 30 minutes. That's another procedure they can do. That's another quicker, less time a patient to be under anesthetic. And the smaller device, the less the anesthetic. Because the new world of pain blockers and things, I can literally control an area of the body and just control that one part of that body, go in there, you're driving home. That was never going to happen. I mean, and this advancement is moving quickly from a technological standpoint, but there you hit it on the head. The insurance company's lagging a little bit. They don't want to reimburse that. But that gap is getting closer because everybody wants to save money. Don't let them fool you. They have the same purpose as everybody else. But like anything, you need the right data to go back to them. But I've seen this trend in the last 5 years, like, hey, show me the data, we'll talk.
Mm-hmm. The interesting point about less anesthesia. So I'd imagine the less anesthesia you use, the less expense there is. Is there also a safety issue? So if you anesthetize somebody for 30 minutes, is there more or less risk of miscalculating compared to anesthetizing somebody for 3 hours?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of data. You can look it up. Long-term effects of anesthesia can have long-term consequences, especially when you have that second, third, or fourth surgery, which there are trends and there's plenty of data on that. Now, advancements, again, you got to love part of the world where we're getting better and better. The technology of being able to put some under is not just, hey, Dave and John, two different people, but yet they use the same way of doing it. There's now what they call genetic performing. In other words, they know that your body type and your basic blood type, you work better with this anesthesia product than a John Krall who's bigger and has a different type. I mean, that's happening. So it's getting better and better. We talk to people, and I know because at my age, everybody seems to be having surgery. And I can just tell from the experiences with myself from 10 years ago to now, the difference. And it's pretty amazing. And it's getting better. But now it's cool, like they do locals. I mean, I had a friend that literally had a spine procedure done, which I've never heard of, done what they call under a local procedure, which literally they put them in like almost like your dentist. It's like you're kind of napping or a colonoscopy, you're kind of there, but you're not there. Where then they just pop you right up. And he was like, wow. This is what it's kind of cool what's happening with this whole advent of the technology. Again, goes back to what I originally said. We now can say, hey, technology can take us there. Can we do that? Can I take Dave's blood and John's blood and have genetic profile? Why do they prescribe a drug for you and me in the same quantity, and I'm 100 pounds bigger than you? That makes no sense. So as computers allow us to take this data and calculate it quickly, good. So in the endoscopic world, and you just saw it this week, can I take the ability of taking data vision, video, and extract data from that video? That's going to change the whole vision world from a doctoring standpoint, because they're going to have comparisons when they're mapping down the body. They're going to see things as they're doing. Like when you take a road trip, you see things you've never seen before. We're going to show doctors a lot of things they've never seen before, because they're now where they haven't been able to go before.
One of the interesting points you mentioned that I wouldn't have thought of is the issue of disposables versus sterilizing longer term equipment. So it seems like disposables is a great deal versus sterilization. But what is the real politic with displacing sterilization by using disposables? Are there independent companies that operate the sterilization in hospitals that may have long-term contracts? Are unions involved in sterilization? Are doctors concerned about disposing things, instruments? Maybe talk about that dichotomy a little bit.
Yeah, so everybody wants sustainability. How can we get the most out of our raw materials in a way that's effective for everybody? We're all on that page. I think we know that more and more. The question is, in the past, where, again, you take this, which is metal and glass and a lot of things, it makes sense to reuse it because it's very expensive to make. But the number one concern is, am I cleaning it? Look at just this little device. I got a little orifice here. I've got another part here. I got a lens here. I got plastic. I got little pieces. And that gets concerned. Now, technology is really good. So to answer the first part of that question, so right now, you're never going to take away in-house sterilization. You're going to improve it. And there's a lot of different ways, again, with newer type technologies. But the problem is you have labor, and you have shifting labor, and you have one hospital that may be like one system, but the equipment in hospital A is different than hospital B and different than hospital C, and they have to manage all that. So now they're managing a big cluster of a lot of things, along with documentation, regulatory, all that. Okay. Outsourcing. Is it better to outsource that? And some hospitals are doing that. So there are companies that are taking, again, newer technology and going to the hospital stage. We will be your third party outsourcing agent. Okay. Because you got labor problems, right now labor's cost. You don't have equipment. Your hospital's double in size, but your sterilization room is, 99 equipment and it needs to be replaced. Is it worth for them to do it versus outsourcing that? Now you have outsourcing that has better controls because they're not doing it just for them. They're doing it for 20 other companies. Same as on scopes and disposability. If I can do it in a very controlled regulatory environment where they're already making sterile implants like pacemakers, all the things that are there, I have a better control system. Bigger volume means I can reduce the cost. And by doing that, now back to the sustainability. Hey, recycling program, like even these scopes, even when they break or whatever, they have a recycling program where they clean them and they'll take parts and keep them going. But again, as there's so many different versions, can I do that? Take a scope that I've used from here, but transition it maybe to a research lab for cadaver studies, to a vet med because their processing may be different? Or can I make it a disposable where I may get 10 uses out of it before it has to get thrown away? Okay. But again, the idea not thrown away is recycle it back to reprocess it. And that has been shown to reduce costs dramatically. I mean, there's plenty of paperwork coming out on that because now the capabilities to sterilize on a mass basis is cheaper than it is to do it individually. And you don't have the risk. Even though you may have cleaned this really good, it's been used versus new and following that direction. Yeah.
So for some, now these medical devices,
I'm sorry, just because of the sizing too, smaller means less, and they can do a lot more and less than you can do with big. Yeah.
okay, all right, that's good. So I know these endoscopic medical devices are different and they have different components and so forth, but are there any supply chain risks in general that impact the production of endoscopic medical devices? Are they, dependent on niche semiconductors or special glass or coating of glass or any special chemicals or metals that present a supply chain risk to produce these devices, especially if they're disposable and you have to produce a lot?
Yeah, and actually, it's more of a worry for the older technology because as they're getting away from them, to keep those scopes manufactured is tough. Yeah, supply chain is always going to be an issue for anybody, depending on what. This goes back to the world. We are now a chip-based environment. No matter, I just got in my neighbor's brand new car, and they go, "I'm driving a laptop. I'm not driving a car." I'm like, it's got everything there. I mean, it can tell you the temperature of your seat. I'm like, are you kidding me? And so that's great, but the same thing is happening in medical. So again, this, when you really think about it, this is a periscope. When's the last time you seen a kid with a periscope? When we were kids, everybody had periscopes, You don't see it because now everybody has a camera and they can take their camera. And so, believe it or not, because in the medical space and there's rules and regulations and all this, to translate over from a time frame of one device to another is a cost. And it's kind of interesting in scoping because you're really making a massive change. You're going to go from this camera on the outside big tower to a plug in a box this big, and I have instant camera. That's a game changer. And it's hard because, well, you got all the big companies, no offense, Strike and all those guys. You got a lot of money invested. You got a lot of people. You got a lot of company equipment and all that. And all of a sudden they're going to fight it like anybody. When your backyard's being invaded, they're going to defend that property. But when you look at the ability, there are products right now I can connect with a solar battery bot or a solar powered battery box and this camera, and I could go to a third world destination with a doctor and a bag of these scopes and a little box, and I could do some pretty good diagnosis pretty quickly. Okay. And so we have to look at it. And this is not just endoscopic. This is every space in medicine where we're going to, big to small. And why not? The less invasive, the better. We're adapting the medicine to the technology. I mean, I can have a 1 millimeter scope that can go anywhere. Absolutely. Can I have a device that can literally look at your brain and almost determine ahead of time because you did the scan? I mean, it's happening. The question is, from a business standpoint, what are those companies? How do you team up and find out? I can tell you this
So,
is it's going to change. It's going to change rapidly.
so at the doctor's offices, for the doctors that use endoscopic devices at the offices, do you think in general they're more attracted to disposable or more permanent that needs to be sterilized? Do they not want to be bothered with making sure they have enough supply and reordering all the time, or are they concerned about disposing, or maybe they already have a contract with a sterilization company? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, most actually now in the office, in fact, you don't even see sterilizers in offices anymore. Maybe like in the dental world where they're doing, or if there is some type of surgical procedure, but pretty much everything now is off the shelf. Why? It's grab and go. It's easy. They can kit it better. They don't have to worry if Sally, the cleaning lady who cleans the instruments, got sick and didn't sterilize the instruments that day. Now, supply chain management, believe it or not, like in any scenario, it lays down to the office staff, but that's the systems again are making it better. That the day I use that, like in our scope, we will know, well, I shouldn't say our scope, but there are scopes now when they plug it in, almost all these devices, not just scopes, but in a lot of things, when they take a disposal and plug it in, it tracks that form immediately. It says that Dave just plugged in scope 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, serial number 8, 9, 10, 11, and it automatically tracks that. That will then automatically say they need to replace that. So you have par levels. I mean, it's going that. This is kind of cool about reducing cost. The biggest cost for doctors right now is not products, it's flow, it's workflow, insurance, making sure that, and now fortunately, because there's some pretty cool systems out there, that's improved dramatically for doctors. So again, doctors have to be specific, I mean, is it better to have like hospitals? You're seeing this even in Arizona where we live, where one hospital says, look, we're going to drop these services, but we're going to make this hospital really good at it. So this is our orthopedic hospital, this is our cardiology hospital. Yeah, they're in Phoenix, you're nice because you can get around pretty quickly. So now they can become more specialized instead of trying to brace the equipment all over the place. Same as endoscopic. With the new technology, if a doctor says, man, we're busy, I need another endoscopic room, he's got to buy $100,000 worth of equipment. Now we could say, grab one of those boxes, grab that coat, and I've got an endoscopic room ready to go because I don't need all this other additional equipment. So that's where it's going. The idea is, how can we reduce healthcare costs in all spaces by improving the workflow and efficiency? And in this case, with endoscopic, again, I'm going to be able to improve the doctor's visions quicker, faster, and allow them to make a diagnosis quicker and faster than he's ever been able to do.
Is there any cost plus procurement at hospitals? So is there any incentive for a procurement manager at a hospital to want to have a big budget, or maybe just for their ego, to be able to make big purchases of more permanent equipment versus the disposables? Is there anything like that at play, or accounting wise, being able to depreciate?
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example. How old's your phone?
My phone, about a year old.
Yeah, what's the average age of most phones on the market now?
2-3 years old.
Right. Okay. So in medical, where do I want to buy something that's going to be really expensive that you would have paid for 5 years ago, like the latest greatest iPhone, which was really cool at that time, or is that latest and greatest iPhone today?
Okay.
It's usable, but the technology's changed because it's happening that fast. So what's happening, there's actually a gap in purchasing right now. And you're seeing this in a lot of areas because we're literally going very quickly from this old school to this new school in probably one of the shortest periods of time in medicine. Because for the first time, the ability, chips have dropped in price. Plastic manufacturing, 3D printing has been able, we now can generate a company I'm working with, consulting with, can generate a handheld device, and the doctor says, I want this kind of hand. I'm doing some trials. Well, before you'd have to send it to the shop, you'd have to imprint. Now I got my 3D printer there. I take an imprint in his hand, and I'm literally printing almost a custom-made hand form within an hour. So that technology, this is what's great about medicine, because now I can do these things. So as we worry about high cost of expensive medicine, we're actually going to be able to deliver instrumentation quicker and faster than we ever have. And so what's nice, so there's this gap of like, should I buy this? Should I not? And there are some gaps in hospitals because they got to make a quick decision pretty quickly. And so you'll see right now in the endoscopic space, believe it or not, the used equipment market's kind of picked up a little bit because it's kind of a stopgap. Well, my car, I'm wanting for the Tesla 25 version. My 20 is going to hang me in there for another year, before I get this, because this is going to be such a leap. And it's funny, remember when the phones were coming out, there was such a leap. I mean, from phone A to B to C was a massive leap. Now they introduce the phone whoop-de-doo because it's kind of plateaued.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. A different question. If you're looking at a for-profit endoscopic practice or a endoscopic surgery center or whatever, is there anything accounting-wise that favors the more permanent endoscopic equipment? Because if you buy an expensive machine, expensive device, I imagine you can capitalize that. You take depreciation, but most people look at EBITDA, which is cash flow or operating earnings before depreciation. So might a company be able to report higher earnings if they were more buying the bigger, not disposable variety versus the disposable variety, where you have to expense all of that stuff all the time, so your earnings might look a little weaker?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question, and that's accounting, and each individual scenario is probably unique, but you're now putting the bet that this equipment that you're going to buy, you're going to have an expended life cycle. Let's say probably 7 years in medical equipment is probably fair. Give 5 or 10. Let's just say 7 as an example. So I'm predicting now you're going to buy some today, Dave, that you got to predict in 2030 is still going to be state of the art.
Mm-hmm.
You want to put a bet on that. Now, I know if within the first 5 years or maybe 3 years, I know there's enough procedures out there that I can get my, dollar bang back.
Right.
Okay. So now I have a big equipment investment and all that. And then I'm betting on a certain technology for a given period of time versus, let's take an example of an endoscopic disposable scope. That works great today, but 2 doctors just came up with an idea by adding this special Wingsing 1400 onto that. They can now do something they've never been able to do before. Okay, great. Since we're making these as they need them, all of a sudden that changes. So now I have the ability, and this again is what's happening in medicine. It's not just under, it's all areas. The ability to adapt quicker than we've ever been able to. I don't have to make those 5-10 year decision-making buildings because it's happening. I mean, the OR of the future is going to look totally different than the OR we know today. Mm-hmm. It's almost going to be like a factory layout where you're going to come in and you're going to do this part first, and they're going to slide to the next stage and to the third stage all within an hour. You're going to get diagnosed, blood, boom. Okay, so this again, and in the challenge of the industry, and if you read the Beckers and the CEO hotlines of all the CEOs of major health organizations, it's one of the biggest things on their plate because they know they need to advance to keep up with the technology, but where do you make smart advancement? Is it worth putting $1 million into a surgical robot when maybe I'm better off putting that $1 million in 5 different procedures and spread the risk? And it's sad that medicine has gotten that way because those are decisions being made versus you should be able to walk in any hospital and get treated for whatever with the best possible technology.
Are there any surgical procedures that should not be done miniature-wise endoscopically? Are there some cases where opening up the chest or opening up the abdomen is really the better way to take care of that?
Absolutely. You're absolutely. There's, it's an evolution of medicine. And I'll give you a real good example. The open heart, bypass surgery was a rip open the chest, and that was it for 100% of the cases. So then it started going minimally invasive to now probably, I think somebody told me it's less than 10% have to be opened because they can do it like either a miniature opening or even now through scope. The thing is, I always say this with medicine, it's a toolbox. The more tools I have, the better opportunity is to fix the scenario. Some tools you're never going to take away that old hand drill, even though you got that fancy battery pack drill in your garage, because that hand drill may be just there for that certain procedure. The idea is, can I now give the doctor, which we're losing lots of them, they're retiring earlier, they're stressed out because why? There's so much pressure on them. Okay. So as we're losing this, we're going to have a real gap in healthcare. So now, how do I give those people that are in healthcare tools to make them be able to function properly, quicker, faster, better, and not want to leave because now they're having other advancements helping their decision making. And it's interesting because again, people like ride the wave. I remember when the spine market hit. Nobody was doing spinal implants. Spinal business now is $100 billion industry in less than 30 years. No one ever a million. When I had my knee done, they would have never even thought about doing that arthroscopically. Today, if a doctor opened up my knee like they did in '72, he'd be sued. So you got to keep evolving. One thing that'll never go away, and again, when you look at markets, what's never going to go away? The eyes of the surgeon. So I'm going to make these eyes more powerful than I ever have using technology to help them make the decisions to cure you and us by using all these other tools and putting them together to deliver. Okay.
So just a couple more questions, I'll let you go. When you said like robots are used, like for I think it's prostate cancer, does the doctor steer that, or does a robot really sent like automatically to do its job to remove the cancer, or is it more like a steering wheel that the doctor is using?
Right. So the past, when they would open up a patient so that doctors could see everything, and they would just like imagine you're opening and you're looking in. So now it's funny because I'll never forget when 20 years ago, when one of the first surgical robots was being introduced in Tucson, and I was down there, and I go, there's no way these hospitals are going to spend $1 million to do this. It's too expensive. Well, boy, prove me wrong. Which made me look at this because surgical robotics is great. So now, to answer your question, my daughter is a general surgeon, so I can speak with a little bit of knowledge. And she now controls that from the outside. She's literally in a control box. Now, guess what? Good cameras and stuff, the eye of the surgeon. So there may be 6 or 7 robots that say, hey, I want to move this over. And so she can hit this button and there goes the cautery to go in there. Now there goes the other hand and makes the clamp. So even though it's her hands doing it mentally, it's the robot controlling it. Okay. So what's is cool because the robot, just like a backup camera on a car, has a sensor. If it sees something you don't have to. And this is, again, part of this whole grant that we talked about. Can I actually, if I'm going in there and the body's not that easily defined as it looks like on graphics, you get fascia, and finding nerves built into fascia is a very difficult thing. And imagine now there's a company that's really cool that that will have it, that literally through infrared detection of blood vessel, it can determine if that's a cell or if that's a nerve root or a blood vessel you don't want to cut there. It's like, nope, can't cut. Oh yeah, again, early stage, whoever thought we'd have a self-driving car 50 years ago, but we do. Same thing. So now you're going to use science and technology to help you prevent errors. And that's where it gets good because now they can make those decisions. Okay, cool. So, and again, look at the computer that's going to send you an MRI and just said, yeah, there's been 100 cases like this. We just found out that if you go right 10 degrees and left, it's a perfect entry point. Okay, cool. Now the doctor looks good. He's got science behind him, helping him. He's guiding him. It's like an airplane pilot. You don't go just get in a plane and fly. You have a map you got to follow. And same thing with doctors. And it's happening really fast. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great. Maybe we can conclude by you work with a lot of interesting medical devices, a lot of interesting technologies. Maybe you could just give us a real quick thumbnail sketch of three very cool technologies that you're seeing in the endoscopic marketplace.
oh yeah, excellent. In the endoscopic space, obviously small sterilization is number one. Number two is devices that attach to that. Okay, like laser, like cautery, like cryo. They're there, but they're not improved. It's very early stage because the devices are dropping so fast that they're waiting, and it's kind of almost not being first is good. And then the third thing is the advent of now computer assisted visualization determination is what I call it. Targeted therapies where, like you said earlier, Dave, with the laser bomb, if I know that's where I need to get to, how quickly can I get to with the least amount of hassle and then have the tools that I need to solve that problem there versus go back, we got to do an x-ray, we got to do an MRI, we're going to bring it back for biopsy, we're going to bring it back for this. That's where it's going to. Are we there today? Almost. Dollars, money, investment, but it's happening. And believe it, give credit to the government as much as I cite to their waste. This project they're working on is pretty amazing because it groups a lot of different companies. We're one of, I've seen 5 companies that is big. Another advent of that is, what about if I kept a camera there internally implanted for like 30 days? That's literally monitoring what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
By treatment killing the cancer, or is it, and being able to literally have an implanted camera that can send Bluetooth information. Not only that, it can send a lot of different information, but that's when we're really getting high techy. Swallow like you take your hypodermic needle and literally shoot a little nanobot in your blood that will go attack a certain thing. I mean, Japan is very advanced on that right now, of literally targeted, mechanical instruments to go in the body like that and find this thing. Like a dog, hey fighter, go fetch your stick.
Yeah.
Hey, robot, give me those cancer cells attached to the tumor on the kidney. Yeah.
All right, so I promise this is the last question. With the FDA's regulatory process for endoscopic medical devices, is there any fast tracking for, if I demonstrate that my device will cause a smaller incision, therefore be less traumatic for the patient, faster recovery times, less expense for the healthcare system? Is there any kind of fast track based on that type of thing? And then secondly, is there any corollary to an orphan drug status for devices? So if I come up with a device that serves a very small community, do I get any special orphan status in devices?
Yeah, excellent question. So the first thing on the repeat that. That was
the first part. Is there any fast tracking if I demonstrate efficacy?
So yes. So the FDA in endoscopes is pretty cool because they have a thing. If you're in this, it's called a 510K.
Yeah.
What 510K means is I've got this device, but I've got a little bit of different bell and whistle to it. It does what it does, but it has this little change in additive. Okay, FDA said, yeah, okay, boom, good. So now back to fast tracking. Remember when we talked about the lungs, okay, getting there quicker. Where did COVID affect the body? It literally suffocated because the virus went into the end of your lung and then it just coated it and you literally suffocated to death. Okay. So because of that, we have applications with drug delivery. Why do I take a pill that affects my whole body versus, and I go hit that COVID, let's say when I first see it, because now I can diagnose very inexpensively, zap it right there immediately with a targeted, antibiotic spray or virus, whatever. This is the first advent you're going to see coming out with that space is in ENT, where nasal infection, where I can go in there, see it, flush it, take it through, and spray an antibiotic and affect the area that versus having to take a whole antibiotic for my body. And they're doing that now, but they're doing it blindly. So the scope adds the vision aspect to it. And then your second question was.
No, I'm sorry. The bottom line there, is there a fast tracking for certain medical devices?
Yeah. Okay. So they have this fast tracking, and again, back to what I said originally with that grant group. Again, kudos to the government. Everybody's been yelling at them, but they're working very hard to improve that process because, again, technology is moving so fast. They have to improve their process, and they're doing this. There's a special application you fill out for fast tracking. Show the application. COVID's big right now. Anything related to lower leg extremity, different issue, but things like that. And blood vessel. So in that area they are, and it's moving quickly again because there's better resources for them to evaluate information too.
Great. And the second, I promise the last question, is there a corollary to orphan drug status for devices? So if I come up with a device that it targets a very small customer base, patient base, do I get any benefits for commercializing that, even though I know I'm approaching a very small market?
You know, that one I can't answer. I don't have that knowledge, but again, this is kind of cool because of the fast tracking, even with drugs. You still need data. It all goes back to data. The question is, we can collect data quicker. And again, can we do a smaller trial? In the past, like if you had a brand new run-of-the-mill implant or something that's never been done, you have to file what they call a PMA. Now you're talking today to do like a new drug, a really wild, good new drug that's not a derivative of something else. Your minimum is 50 to 100 million. But okay, what if I have, let's say, a 1% of the population drug that I can think I can do this? Where do I need to really have a 400 patient study, or because can I do it with 20 and have enough data to then say this is safe and effective on that? But then there are methods. There's IDEs and there's different programs within the government to do that. But that's, you got to, man, that's 10 conversations and 10 podcasts to even scratch that one on the surface, to be honest with you. But what I like and what I'm seeing in the industry and what I'm seeing from government from a 50,000 foot view, technology is changing rapidly. Applying it to medicine is one of the fastest growing areas. The ability to get it through quicker, faster with less cost, which saves us all money, and then being able to get it to market as quickly as possible. So believe it or not, the U.S., again, not to the U.S., we have very good manufacturing. Minnesota, the Massachusetts area, Phoenix, as you were just involved in last week, Dave. We're going to be a hub here. And can we bring those technologies with smart people all working together to say, we've got this merged together. And this is that program that I like with the government, because there's a teaming page. You can submit your company. And these companies are now seeing, I didn't know 3 of these companies even existed. They're small. They're like us. How does people know about us? We don't have the big dollars. And now they're putting that together. And there's some pretty cool things going on and some good money that we hope will extend this quicker and faster. So I have a lot of faith in it. Good market, keep your eye on it. Quantum computing is the key to all this. It's going to change medicine like we've never seen.
Okay, great. Well, that was a very interesting session. So John Krall, thank you so much for spending some time with us and imparting your decades of experience and knowledge with us.
Oh, and I'm just a little mountain, there's so many cool things, guys. If you're into this space, look it up. There's a lot going on. And if you want, they're more than happy to contact me, Dave. If anybody, are happy to share that information. And I'll open up my OneNote and share whatever you want. So.
Okay, great. Well, John Krall is a great source of knowledge and information on medical devices. Thank you.